Ever feel like you just never have time? You're just way too busy to have any hobbies at all. Hi, my name is Tyler. I am a part-time freelance software developer, content creator, and indie game developer. And here we will explore ways of being productive that are impactful yet simple, one step at a time. So let's get straight into it. The first one is learn a language. Ideally, it's a lot easier to learn a language when you are very little kid. But frankly, I do think it's actually a lot easier to learn as an adult because you're able to use all the tools and the skills and you actually can focus. There are a lot of times where when I was little, I just could not concentrate and I didn't really have the motivation for it. But as an adult, I do think that it's a lot easier to learn a language. So the question is, how do we do this? Well, I'm sure everyone knows Duolingo, and I personally like Duolingo for what it is. That it is gamified, and it gets you to just do it. Yes, I don't think you can be fluent with just Duolingo, but it's a good starting point, and it's a good way to get your feet wet and just learn something. There's also a lot of apps like Babbel, LinkQ. I do use a few of the stuff that I mentioned, namely Pimsleur and LinkQ, and it fits busy schedules because it doesn't require all that much time. Especially with Duolingo, you only need like 5 minutes maybe at most for a lesson, because at the end of the day it's important just to be able to get it in. But with Pimsleur though, the good thing is they're audio lessons, so it's a lot easier to find time to do it. For example, let's say you're driving on the GW bridge, because the GW bridge is always really bad during rush hour. It's atrocious. Anyone who lives in the tri-state area will know this. Or even when you're commuting on the bus, because a lot of people take public transportation, because driving in New York is abysmal. And the convenience of it that being audio is that all you have to do is listen and speak. And I do find that the repetition really ingrains the concepts and really ingrains the meanings. So it's almost a little more automatic. And I found that it actually got me to be more confident speaking with my girlfriend, with my mom, with my grandma. Yes, I'm not perfect, but it was a great starting point. And honestly, it doesn't require that much attention as long as you're sort of paying attention, but also be safe while driving. Please don't crash. Now, realistically, there's also the cost. I do think if you're in it for the long haul and language is something you want, I do think that Pimsleur is really worth the money for an annual or even lifetime subscription whenever that is available. I know that's currently available right now, I think at the end of the year, given that it's the holidays and whatnot. But if you just want some quiet peace time during those commutes and you don't really want to commit too much to it, and you just sort of want to see if you're interested, if you're not, I still would suggest Duolingo. Just because it has a ton of languages, and I do think to some extent it worked. Because I used it for many years. And even to this day, I still do chess on Duolingo. Which, on a side note, the chess stuff is actually really fun. I was considering making a whole video about it, but I just want to drop it here. The Duolingo chess thing is fun. Add that as a little bonus for the whole language thing that, yes, learn chess on Duolingo if you want. Now, the second one is going to be reading. For obvious reasons. I'm sure most people know that this is an option. I do find that nowadays it's become a lot harder to focus. And I feel like reading is one of those places where if you just like sit down and do something and not have to worry about all of those expectations and just enjoy the thing you're reading. And also, I've been reading a lot for a lot of my own knowledge and my learning, especially a lot of business books and a lot of self-help books. And what I think is most important for me when I do, especially when I read those self-help books, is that I'm not necessarily just saying that it's gospel, that it's something I need to follow word for word and that they're always right. It's a good way to give me a new perspective, even if I completely disagree with what's being what's being written in the book. And at the end of the day, as long as I get like one thing out of the book, it's been totally worth it. And the way I try to fit it in, and I'm a bit of a crazy person because I am kind of reading a lot of books all at once, which is stupid. I don't recommend it. But to make it a more micro-sized habit, I do suggest at least reading a chapter a day. just to get it in. And also, if you feel like reading more, you can always read more. No one's stopping you from reading more if you get into the groove of reading. But I do think it's a very, very good habit, especially in the age of attention spans and videos and short form and a lot of stuff in technology and AI and everything. Now, for actual suggestions, if you care to actually have suggestions, or if you have something you want to read, even if it's just for pleasure. I'm reading Throne of Glass. I'm reading for fun. But especially for dating, I know the How to Not Die Alone is something that I've read and it's helped me tremendously. There's the Let Them theory. Currently reading the Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, which is an interesting book about it really simplifies the idea of cooking to just salt, fat, acid, and heat. I thought it was pretty fun. I've already mentioned Throne of Glass. That is honestly a good series. I also recommend Paper Magician. I love that series. It's just something about interesting magic with paper and other sorts of objects as opposed to just fire, water, and air and all that stuff. I just recommend it. It's really good. I have a lot of books. I need to read through a lot of these. There's just way too many. Where are my finished books, actually? Oh, there's also the How to ADHD for any of you ADHDers out there. I've read through that. I've read through Playing with Fire, which is the whole financial independence, retire early stuff. It Begins With You, relationship stuff, I feel like has helped me understand a lot of it. And there's a whole lot of other books I'm currently reading. I think I'm also reading Out of Zero, which is I've been reading a lot of finance stuff as well. But yeah, let's move on to the third thing, which is touch typing. And what I mean is essentially typing faster, quote unquote faster, but also because I've never actually learned how to type, and actually it's something that I'm doing now. I actually want to make a whole separate video on this for another time when I'm actually done with learning properly, because I've got the method down, but I still don't feel like I'm fast enough to be like, okay, I can talk about this now. But for context, I'm using a website called Typing Club, and I'm learning how to use the touch type method because I've been using my fingers, my pointer fingers, for the longest time, and while my finger pecking method is more than sufficient in many cases, I just thought it'd be a fun challenge to try to push myself to do something different than just being like, okay, I can just do this. It's more of a challenge for myself to see if I can do it. And if it's in the busy schedules because, well, it's like showing up to practice. You just have to show up for 5, 10, 15 minutes, just do the exercises on the website. You wouldn't have to pay for it, honestly. You could pay for it to get rid of the ads, but I am not paying for it because the free version is more than enough. And the basic idea is that it goes through all the letters and what fingers you need to use, and a suggestion that it will echo constantly when you're doing the actual exercises is to not look at the keyboard, because you get more out of your time when you're not, because the point is to not look at your hands. Because I did that with my finger pecking method where I just look at my hands all the time, and I can't, it's not efficient in the slightest. I think it's just a little fun thing to do, if you want to challenge yourself, if you just want something else to do. And also it's sort of helpful at the end of the day. The fourth one is audiobooks. And this sort of ties back into the books part because, well, and also the Pimsleur stuff kind of, because some of the books, I have a lot of stuff I want to read. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to consume as much as I can. There's still some part of me that wants to be able to read some of the stuff because I want to slowly consume stuff and slowly sort of process stuff. Especially if it's some more self-help stuff, or especially reading when I just want to slow down and just read. Only read. But especially for a lot of the business stuff and a lot of the finance stuff and a lot of just content stuff too, and stuff I want to really learn, I want to be able to move through it faster and also basically learn faster. And this ends up being super convenient because, again, the commit time, like all the other hobbies, is like as long as you're in the car, in the bus, just as long as you don't miss your stop. And also be safe. Always be safe when you're doing stuff in the car. The good thing about audio is it uses a different part of your brain, so it doesn't fully interfere, but when you have to actually think, it makes it a little hard. But I do think drives and riding on the bus are perfect times to be listening to audiobooks. And I do believe that it actually helps, because the point of audiobooks for me is to learn. And for some people it can be for entertainment, because I know there's audiobooks for Harry Potter, there's a lot of books for just a lot of fiction books that are out there right now. I'm sure there's a Throne of Glass audiobook out there and I probably could use, but I feel like reading instead. I should really actually look into that. I wonder what the narration's like. And then finally, there's Learn the Code. This one is a bit more of the intensive one, which is why I decided to put it at the very end, because even though we're in an age of AI, I do think it's still important to understand how to code and have your basics down. And I've been finding it more and more with my coding stuff that maybe I'm just doing this completely wrong. Maybe I'm just coding not necessarily completely efficiently with Claude and whatnot. But I do find it easier to still rely on my ability, but also using Claude to sort of just help me structure, help me answer my questions. But I do think a lot of that understanding at the end of the day has come from all of my skills pre-AI. So for quick context, I've been learning coding since I was in middle school, so that's 13, 14 years from now. I remember being that kid in the library who was coding Python, and for some reason the librarians thought I was hacking. I don't know why. It was just an age where no one really knew coding that much. But yeah, it was like an age of before AI, and when we had stuff like Stack Overflow or Google. That's all we had, which is a lot more convenient than what people had back then before internet. But in terms of how to fit it in your schedule, I still want to stick with that small amount of time. However, I want to extend it to 15 and 30 minutes, just because some of the stuff does take a bit of time, and depending on what you consume, whether it's video for instance, it'll probably take a little longer because it's an explanation. With coding, 15 minutes or the lower end of that range is more to actually be doing the coding stuff, like with Code Academy, with some online code as you learn sort of thing. I personally really liked my little kids Python book when I was in middle school, because it was just, okay, I just go to this page, I copy stuff, and I feel like the structure really helped me learn and just focus on trying it and experimenting and just changing stuff left and right. And also I found when I was in middle school, I was much more curious and I had a lot more fun with just changing. I don't know, there's just something really fun about just tweaking stuff and seeing what happens. It's kind of why I like game dev a lot, because you can just tweak something and it changes something and you can visually see it. But generally speaking, dedicating like 15-30 minutes just to do a couple lessons, make a little bit of progress, maybe in your Code Academy or online whatever course. And it's something that's always completely reoccurring in all these hobbies. It's do a little bit every day, show up, and then move on with your day. At the end of the day, a lot of us just are really busy and we don't have time to commit hours sometimes, so we've got to make do with what time we've got. And also, if you're like me and can't really focus very well to begin with. But yeah, that was the 5 hobbies. If there are any other hobbies you want me to cover, leave them down in the comments. But yeah, that's the end of the video. If you're interested in this video, it's about one of the first hobby that I mentioned, which is language. I sort of talk about what I've been using a little bit. Some of it's a little bit outdated with Duolingo and Language Guide stuff, but generally speaking, this is what I've been following up until recently. But if you're interested and you're curious and you want to check it out, click this. Alright, peace.